After almost 10 years, we finally have a new opportunity. An untrained Jedi, new to the ways of the Force, but one who wields a lightsaber. And here we are, only a few months away from a new single-player Star Wars game, and I can't help but feel the marketing is all wrong for this. A bunch of new gameplay for Jedi Fallen Order came out today, gameplay that I saw weeks ago when I played Fallen Order at EA Play. By the way, big thanks to Electronic Arts for flying me out to EA Play. It was awesome. They had Purge troopers. And while this gameplay is so much better than what they showed in the reveal, it should have been the reveal. The gameplay and combat just doesn't look as fun to many people as it is to play. When I watched the reveal, I actually agreed with many of the comments saying that combat looked shallow and dated, until I played the game. That's a problem. While I played the game and while I watched the developers play, I made a lot of notes, along with hours of reading and research. So this video is going to be everything you need to know about Jedi Fallen Order. It's going to be jam-packed full of information that they haven't really been talking about for some reason. Like bug dismemberment. Just give us this, but with human bodies. We're going to break down the Force mechanics, planetary stuff, the game world, how and why lightsaber combat is deeper and more clever than it looks. This game does have a lot going for it. The production quality is great. The combat is like Sekiro. The planets are very diverse. It's set between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, which my notes are telling me is a positive, since everybody hates the sequel trilogy. It's got women in it. Too many women! Don't give me Laura Dern. Give me the weird-ass fish alien man with the gills. So, it's set between everyone's two favorite trilogies. The one that we flip-flop between loving and hating, depending on memes, and the one that you have to own on Laserdisc to watch properly. And so the trailer comes out, gameplay comes out, and I hear more talk about Keanu Reeves popping up for 2 seconds at the end of Cyberpunk's trailer, giving the most breathtaking expression. It was a bitchin' trailer, to be fair, but where's the Fallen Order hype? Well, I don't think the trailers have done this game justice. So, let's break down everything there currently is to know about Jedi Fallen Order. But before that happens, I'd like to give a big thanks to EA for flying me out to EA Play, where I got to play Jedi Fallen Order and make all these sweet notes. This is the most interesting reveal I've experienced, in that the carefully made gameplay reveal and trailer left me feeling kind of meh. However, upon actually playing the game and seeing the entire level, my opinion did a complete 180. That's the opposite of what usually happens. Usually the trailers and reveals get me excited, get me hyped, but when I get my hands on the game, it's disappointing.
And they're not quite finished, but I think it looks really cool so far, especially the storm effects, which aren't turning up so great right now, but you can see the trees being blown over and stuff like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
This was the opposite of that, but I guess Star Wars is pretty good at subverting expectations now. The level of Kashyyyk you're seeing takes place a few hours into the game, and it's supposedly around 15 to 20% of the planet, which is encouraging for the game's length because there are 4 planets we can see in the star map, and there might be more. And I'm going to talk out of my ass for a second, but the developers said that each level or section is between half an hour to an hour long. So if we average that to, let's say, 45 minutes, and figuring conservatively if each level or section takes around 20% of a planet, then that would mean with these 4 planets we would have 15 hours of gameplay. Completely talking out of my ass here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this game is over 20 hours long, which for me would be a good sweet spot because I don't want a lot of padding. I want a good, nice, tight narrative, but still with a lot of stuff to do. The Stinger Mantis is your hub. You can walk around the ship, there's things to do on it, different areas of it, secrets to it, narratives to be had. It's kind of like the Normandy. And like the Normandy, you have a star map. You can return to any planet that you've been to before to explore them further. They've also said that each region, each planet, will not only have a different look, but a distinct gameplay feel tapping into their different ecosystems, which is great. I did notice that many of the set pieces or objects that you interact with within the demo seemed fairly unique in that they wouldn't be repeatedly used throughout the game in every level. Like this piece of mining equipment, which makes sense here, because Kashyyyk is being strip mined. Basically, they're not setting out to make this a cookie-cutter experience across the planets. They've said that planetary uniqueness also extends to things like force abilities that you learn, history you find, and BD-1's overcharge ability, which would mean that we're seeing some unique set pieces like the AT-ATs on Kashyyyk and set dressing like the mining equipment, but other versions of that for other planets. And you do see some awesome set pieces. Obviously, the game's not all caves and factories. This game is canon and it incorporates a lot of elements from the movies, the anthology movies, original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and even TV shows like Rebels and the Clone Wars. You get to go inside of a canon AT-AT, which one of the developers said was one of the larger AT-ATs from Rebels, I believe. You get to explore the inside of it before you reach the pilot seat. The level starts with Cal in the waters of Kashyyyk, and he swims up to the AT-AT, he mounts it. Poor choice of words. But he does, and then he infiltrates it using his lightsaber, and once he's inside, you make your way through the inner workings and passageways, past speeder bikes and storage. You find some dead stormtroopers that were killed by blaster bolts penetrating the hole next to them, and this is all canon. You're inside of a canon AT-AT. It's extremely detailed, it's really cool looking, but not all the troopers inside are dead. And there's a fight inside of the AT-AT. And although these are large machines, they're still pretty tight on the inside. So it was surprising to me how well the combat and camera worked in such tight quarters. And you do control the AT-AT, it's not on rails. I don't know if you can do a 180 and walk into the abyss. Why would you want to? But you do control where it walks, where it fires, and you have two forms of fire. One of my biggest concerns was all of this feeling like a theme park ride, but it didn't. All of these elements that the game is comprised of, the set pieces, the puzzles, the characters, didn't feel detached like I had feared. Instead, it flowed well, which is why I'm frustrated that they chopped up the reveal. Anyway, I'm gonna get to combat, gameplay mechanics, planetary stuff in like 2 seconds. But first, I just want to say that production value is fantastic. The music is amazing, the sound design, it's bombastic, it's cinematic. The game isn't at release polish yet, they're still polishing, but there has been talk about graphics, and while it's not NVIDIA RTX level, I will say they're very consistent when you're playing the game. It doesn't seem to matter what's happening on screen, it's a stable level of very good quality, which is great for immersion. Personally, I would rather have very good graphics of consistent quality than occasionally great graphics with dips of weirdness. So, before combat, we're getting into the world and some Star Wars stuff, which brings us to the popular question, is there dismemberment? Which brings us to the popular question, is Jedi Fallen Order open world? Or is it linear? What is it? The amount of times I've seen this question tells me that A, a lot of people haven't heard it's linear open world, or B, they don't know what that is. Fallen Order is not one big sandbox like Far Cry, but a series of areas in which missions are fairly linear, but the environments themselves are larger, and you have the freedom and space to explore. And exploration does seem to be a focus of the experience. Fallen Order has no waypoints, they encourage you to explore using sights and sounds. The game doesn't pause when you're using the map. Places you've been to are colored in, and points of interest are highlighted. That's about it. The developers have stated multiple times Metroid Prime served as the inspiration for many mechanics and the world of Jedi. But instead of comparing it to Metroid Prime, which I'm assuming is when most of you were born, I'm going to be comparing it to Uncharted and God of War 2018, which are just as close in many ways and much newer. In a sense, it's structured like God of War, where you can go back to levels you've already visited to explore places you haven't been. The developers said, quote, "The game is not really linear. We have linear sections of the game, and I'd say each 30-minute to 1 hour section we call a level." I wonder if any areas are mission exclusive. Could that be what he's referencing with linear sections? We don't know. There's a golden path through levels which will be somewhat linear, but there's also different branching options and different choices to make, which I kind of picture like this. It looks like I'm really bad at drawing a Stussy, but I'm assuming, which means I'm probably wrong.
Sure, Jan.
But I'm assuming a lot of the branching options and choices to make are like this. Path A splits into Path B and C, but after a short diversion, both flow back into Path A. Again, maybe not. And even if it was so, that wouldn't be a bad thing. It would add variety and affect gameplay. But the term branching options does make me curious. The world also has chests that hold items that can extend your force and health meters permanently, and skill points, along with hidden secrets in the levels. You can also find workshop benches for upgrades, like droid overcharges, which allow you to turn certain machines on and off. There's also stone runes set in the ground throughout levels that will allow you to mess around with your skills and abilities screen. These also act as save points, a little like bonfires. As for the open part of linear open world, there's ability gates, which are a lock and key system. When you get a new force ability, that's a key for some locks you passed earlier. In very basic terms, look at your force push as a red key card and force freeze as your yellow key card. You can now open red and yellow doors. It is more dynamic than that. These aren't just doors. You'll be swinging from vines, wall running, balancing on beams, climbing, chaining together all that parkour while using force powers to open new paths. This will also tie into puzzles. They've said that behind some ability gates, there are whole other regions for you to explore, which sounds very promising, although I'm not sure what they mean by whole other regions. Gameplay time. They've said the game is basically finished, and at this point they're focusing on polishing things like graphics and gameplay. I didn't see any bugs or glitches. It looked fine, so I don't know why they didn't just show the full level. Regardless, specific aspects of combat could be changed before launch, so keep that in mind. Fallen Order isn't like The Force Unleashed. This isn't a loose hack-and-slash combat game. You won't be mindlessly killing, but instead mindfully killing. They call it thoughtful combat, and many compare it to Dark Souls. I prefer comparing it to Sekiro. Timing and parrying are key, because the enemies you can't kill in one hit. A Jedi. Feel skilled. Namely purge troopers, which feel capable and dangerous. The opposite of how they looked in the gameplay demo. It's not a combo-based game. There are combos, but it's not the focus. The focus is timing, and what the enemy is doing as much as what you're doing. A core rule of the game's combat is you want to kill as efficiently as possible, with as few moves as necessary. And some force abilities like Force Pull aren't so straightforward, as some enemies can use it as an opportunity to attack, like this. Some of them will also try to resist your force moves. I'm not sure if you'll need to use a different intensity for that. They open the skills and abilities screen briefly, and there were so many my eyes didn't have time to zero in on one, but it was a web of interconnected abilities that looked substantial. There were different routes, some were interconnected, but fine details like this could change before release. Combos and chained attacks aren't easy to execute because enemies recover fast, especially the purge troopers, which are a lot harder than they look. Button mashing will get you killed. Interestingly, there were about 5 of us that played, so 4 of us got to see at least one other guy play before we did, on top of already seeing the developer play. So even though we had plenty of time to familiarize ourselves and learn from other people's mistakes, we still had trouble. Granted, 7 minutes of yourself playing and 30 plus minutes of watching other people play isn't that much time, but still. Stormtroopers can be killed in one hit, but are dangerous in numbers and at range. Something I immediately noticed in the gameplay video was slow blaster bolts, and I realized when I was playing that if they were much faster, things would become far more difficult. Managing multiple stormtroopers firing at you while you're fighting a purge trooper is already enough of a handful with this combat system. To take distant troopers out, you either have to throw your lightsaber or deflect their bolts. The act of deflecting bolts seemed pretty automatic in that they're snappy so you don't need to aim them, but timing is still involved. Faster bolts and aiming deflected bolts is a cool thought, but in practice, it might be too much. Enemies that can block lightsabers have block meters. Deplete the meter, and you can truly strike them with your saber. Well-timed parries can allow you to bypass the block as well. A decent amount of higher-tiered enemies can be killed in one hit if you parry them. All of this goes a long way to making enemies not feel spongy, but instead just skilled duelists. And keep in mind, your character Cal is untrained and new to the ways of the Force. You can choose how technical you want to be in fights. If you're good with timing, you can sidestep, allowing you to use that very small window after an enemy attacks you to attack them. Or you can dodge, where timing is less vital but you also miss that window. And timing is tricky. It may look forgiving, but it'll surprise you. Granted, you can play it safe, but if you want to get those parries in, if you want to look like a badass, you've got to embody it. The way you manage crowds is generally through force moves. Enemies also react to where you force push and pull them. Push them into a wall and they'll be stunned. Force push a flame trooper into a wall, his backpack will explode. Force throw a flame bug at enemies is basically a bomb. You can throw them into each other, throw droids, and of course, force frozen blaster bolts still deal damage. As you power up your character, you can do this on a larger scale. You control the intensity of certain force moves by how long you hold their corresponding buttons, like the strength of force push or how long you freeze an enemy. This is very useful considering you can't just spam force attacks. Your force bar doesn't regen with time. It regens by attacking, parrying, and killing enemies. The amount regained is dependent on who your target is. However, in the gameplay reveal, the force bar was set to regenerate. I'm assuming this was so they could show off force moves a lot more often, but this was not representative of gameplay. Enemy archetypes we know about so far are stormtroopers with energy shields at the end of their blaster, flame troopers, rocket launcher troopers, the KX series security droid, and planet-specific fauna like giant ogre beasts, acid slugs, lizards, and spiders. Sometimes you'll fight vehicles like the AT-ST, which can fire lasers, rockets, and mines. I'd imagine these fights might go like the battles in Shadow of the Empire, but better. Fallen Order features a variety of bosses, mini-bosses, and the creatures that appear in each world are unique to those places. So there isn't a green forest spider, but also a beige desert spider. There are also dialogue choices in the game, but I prefer to call them optional exposition. They don't really change anything. It's not like Mass Effect where you have people's lives in your hands. It's like Mass Effect when you say you'd like to learn more about Tally's suit. So, kind of like Anthem's dialogue choices, but with interesting writing. That's a joke. Well, looking over my notes, that is it. That's everything there is to know and everything you there is lightsaber customization. You've got like an orange blade, which is really cool. You can customize BD1 cosmetically, but I'm assuming you guys already knew that. In any case, that's it. So, if you guys watched this far, thank you. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I've got some videos in the end screen on Ghost Recon Breakpoint that are done in a similar style like this. Analytical, investigative, and I think you'd enjoy them. And also, leave a comment on what you think about Fallen Order so far. What do you think about the combat system? I love it, personally. I think a Sekiro-style combat system is perfect for lightsabers. But, yeah, I'd like to know what you have to say. Anyway, thanks again. May the Force be with you. Always.
It's headed for us. Can we do anything?